ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our weekly session. Today, as discussed last time, we will raise certain questions. We will have some clarifications on those questions. We will start with one of the questions which has been raised many times, that is about Vasana. And then we will move to some other questions thereafter. Now, this word Vasana actually originates from the word Vasan. Vasan means clothing. The वस्त्र जो हम पहनते हैं, that is Vasan. And Vasana means the clothing in a heavier sense, that you wear heavier clothing. Because this word na has been used in Sanskrit to denote larger quantity. For example, we have this word in many of Sanskrit roots, like Vedana. Ved means to know, and Vedana is to know in larger quantity. इसी तरह से यातना, to make suffering to others in a larger quantity. So there are many words which use this na at the end to denote the larger quantity of the same element. So Vasan and Vasana, Vasan means clothing we wear, and Vasana is the larger quantity of their clothing, the heavier clothing, you can call it. So Vasan basically starts with what we call karmic imprint. It is mostly in the beginning, it is inheritance from the past birth. It is the what we call vrati, which becomes pravarti in the last birth. Let me give you an example. When you put water on the roof of a house, it tends to flow in a particular direction where there is somewhat slopy. It will take a route which is slopy route. And then if you keep putting water on that roof again and again, that particular imprint of the flow of water will become more rigid, and the water will flow in that direction only all the time. So that is the vrati then becomes pravati, that it becomes stronger. So it starts from the vrati, what kind of tendencies we have inherited. And then if we give more emphasis to those vratis in our current life, then they become pravarti, they become a sort of stronger tendency of our conduct, of our behavior. So Vasana is exactly the same way. We inherit some of these tendencies from our past birth, and then if we keep emphasizing on them in the current birth, they become stronger and stronger. Now Vasana is basically, desire to have more, desire for, acquisition. Now it could be acquisition of wealth, that is Vasana. It could be acquisition of power, that is also Vasana. Acquisition of sexual desires, that is also Vasana. Very often Vasana is linked with sexual desire, but that is not necessarily true. That is one of the tendencies, but Vasana could be for wealth, Vasana could be for power, Vasana could be for social prestige. It could be for any of the, what you call pillars of temptation in this world, which attract you, and then you become greedy for that particular pillar. So that is called Vasana. And it becomes stronger from Vasan, it becomes Vasana when we continue to use that tendency again and again. So the tendency becomes stronger and stronger. It is often said in Vedic terms that when you put more fuel in the fire, the fire becomes stronger. It's exactly the same thing here. When you use that tendency again and again, the vasana becomes stronger and stronger. So you have to wean out from that. You have to, abandon it completely. Then only you can, get rid of it. Now, vasana does not mean that you should not have a desire for essential needs of life. Essential needs of life are not vasana. They are actually the necessities for all of us to live in this world. For example, we need to have a place to live, we need to have food to eat, we need to have some clothing to put on, we need to have some support for our health, some support for our guests who are coming. So, all those basic needs are not part of vasana. The vasana is, beyond those needs. When you have desires, that is vasana. And desires have the tendency to grow in what we call geometric terms. Like somebody has a car, then he wants to have two cars, then he wants to have a helicopter, then he wants to have an airplane, he wants to have something else and something else. So that is vasana. But essential need of life is not part of vasana. Those are required for our day-to-day life in this world. So that is the distinction between essential needs and vasana. And vasana can keep propelling you. They can keep pushing you from inside, and that will actually transform your action, because ultimately that vasana becomes your action in life. And that is why some people are so greedy for money, some people are so greedy for power, some people are so greedy for sexual desire. So all those directions are propelled, and then their conduct becomes like that. I have seen people in all these forms. Some people are all the time very rich people, but all the time very greedy. Very powerful people, but want to have more and more power. Very, people who have a beautiful spouse and, wonderful people around them, also driven by sexual desire. So all those are part of vasana. That clothing becomes stronger on you, so you disappear and the clothing takes over. So it becomes a symbol of your behavior. That vasana becomes a symbol of your behavior. So vasana is, I would say, to some extent an excessive form of desires which are beyond basic human needs. And that is where vasana starts, and they continue to grow. They start also in the form of sanskar, because from the previous birth, if we have indulged in those kind of tendencies, we inherit those tendencies in the current birth, and then they continue to grow further if we keep putting more fuel to that fire. So the fuel keep adding to that. Now, vasana is always like a mirage. They can never be satisfied, because there's no end to human desires. And as I mentioned, they grow in geometric progression. So they keep growing. So there's absolutely no end to it. They keep and keep growing. They keep pushing you for more. You do not realize what you are doing. Your conduct changes so much. You may be having millions of dollars in your account or millions of rupees in your account, but still those who are driven by vasana, they want to collect more and more and more. Like I give you an example, these Hollywood stars, they have a lot of money. There's nothing, less, or Bollywood star, they have a lot of money. But these Bollywood stars, they go for what? Advertisements for gutka, advertisements for pan bahar. They do not even think that they are causing so much damage to the society, only because their vasana is so deep to earn more and more money. And they don't know what would they do with this money ultimately, because the current wealth they have is more than enough to keep them in good state for maybe 1,000 years. They will not survive for that long. Still, they want to collect more and more money. So the Vasana drives you in a wrong direction. Similarly, desire for power, excessive desire for power also drives you in wrong direction. You do all kinds of wrong activities. We have seen a lot of politicians in India who indulge in all kinds of malpractices, who indulge in corruption just because of that Vasana. The Vasana drives them in that direction. So the wealth, the sex, and the power, these are the three pillars of Vasana which keep driving you in that direction. Now, this is the word which has also been used as what we call Trishna in Buddhist philosophy. In fact, Lord Buddha very clearly said that संसार में दुख है और दुखों का मूल कारण तृष्णा है. So he has actually described Trishna as the root cause of various uh, pain and distress we face in our life. So this is absolutely important to understand that this vasana ultimately lead us to distress. It doesn't give us the happiness which we are looking for. It actually leads us to more and more unhappiness. So this is one point we must realize as part of our, what we call experience, part of our knowledge inherited from our shastras. We must understand that trishna keeps growing. Like if we add ghee to the fire keeps growing further and further. Similarly, if we keep satisfying our vasana, it will keep growing in geometric progression, and ultimately it will force us to do certain actions which are undesirable, which we should avoid in life. But this is what is happening. A lot of people end up doing this. I know some people who are very rich people doing great wealth, but they indulge in what we call drug trades. Some of them indulge in narcotics, some of them indulge in bribing people and evading taxes and things like that. So wrong practices happen because of this vasana. The vasana drives you in that direction without your own knowledge. You don't even realize what you are doing, but this is what people end up doing. So this is the tendency of vasana, and as Lord Buddha said also, this becomes the principal cause of our distress in life. The distress in life is because of this excessive desire of certain things we have. Now, I would like to give one, very, I would say, relevant example, and also very important in Indian philosophy, in the Indian Upanishads, and it is also mentioned in Mahabharata, it is also mentioned in Bhagavad Puran, and has also been referred to in variety of ways. The story has many manifestations, so don't go by the the truth of the story. The story may be true, may not be true, because it has so many variations. But the moral of the story is absolutely true, and that is what I want to mention today. There was a very famous king called Yayati. Now, Yayati was actually from the Moon dynasty, the Chandrama dynasty, from where the Kurukshetra, the Kuru dynasty comes, and from where the Bharat was one of his successors, and the name of India, Bharat, comes from. So this is that dynasty. Yayati is one of the first kings in that dynasty. He was a great king. He conquered large areas and he was ruling fantastically. He did great work for the people of the country. But then he has his own desires. So he completed 100 years of life. And then at the end of the life, the Yamdut came to take him back. He said, now time to die, time for death. So we are taking you back. But he told Yamdut that, listen, I have Just come in this world. I'm enjoying it. Why do you want to disturb me right now? Let me live little more time. So Yamdut said, no, no, that is not possible, but we can give you one concession. That if one of your sons agrees to sacrifice his youth for you, then he will become old and you will become young. So you can have another 100 years if one of your sons gives his youth to you. So he had two wives. Actually, those names are very famous. You must have heard those names. His wives' names are mm, Devyani, and Devyani was the daughter of Sukracharya. Sukracharya was the priest of the Devaj. Demons. He was the priest of the demons, but very knowledgeable person. And his daughter was Devyani. And the other one is Sarmista. Now, Sarmista was the daughter of the king of the demons. And Sarmista was actually, because of certain regions, she was working as a maid servant of Devyani, and that was, because of certain wrongs which had been done in the past. So when Devyani was married to Yayati, the Sarmista also came with her, and then Yayati also married Sarmista subsequently. So he had Devyani and Sarmista, two wives, and he had five children, three from one and two from another. So none of them agreed except one, the Puru. Puru was the youngest son. He agreed, and he said that, listen, since you are not satisfied with your life even after 100 years, what is the point in my living this life? So I sacrifice my youth for you. He said that. So he sacrificed his youth, and the Yayati got another 100 years of his life. He again continued. He enjoyed his life. He had all the wealth in the world. He had fulfilled all his desires, including sexual desires, everything. Again, after the 100-year period was over, and again he was asked by the Yamdut to move, but he said, no, no, this is not enough. And then again he was told that one of your younger sons can give his youth to me, then youth to you, then you can have another 100 years. So this process continued for 1000 years. The Yayati in certain stories lived up to 1000 years, and then in the last 100 years, that is the last leg of the 1000 year, he realized that this process is infinite. I have been doing it all through, but my desires are still not fulfilled. So in the last phase of his life, he became totally disillusioned, and as a result of that disillusionment, he became a sannyasi. He gave up everything, said, listen, these are infinite processes. These vasanas cannot be satisfied ever. And that is why I have decided to give up all this and become a sannyasi. So in that last phase, he became a saint. And then when the Yamdut came to take his life, he gave up his life very easily. And the Puru, who was the first son who gave his youth, he was revived and he became the next king of the Kuru dynasty. So this is how the story goes. Now let us not go into the truth or truthfulness of that story. Whether it is true or not doesn't matter. And which version is true, that is also not important. What is important here is that the vasanas, the desires, are infinite and they cannot be satisfied ever. And therefore, at some stage or the other, we will have to make a decision whether we continue in that path of vasana or whether we abandon that path completely. So the saints have told us, the people who have experienced various things in life, including Yayati, they are telling us that the path of Vasana is infinitely long. It's like the horizons when we see in the sky, where we see the sky and the earth are, joining together. We move forward again, the horizons are looking at the same way. You move another 1,000 kilometers, again they look the same way, but they never meet. Exactly the same way, the vasanas are never fulfilled. They continue to move to a new horizon. It's like a mirage in the desert where you see water, but when you move there, the water has moved further down. And when you move further, and then again water has moved further down, exactly the same way the vasanas continue. So sooner or later, we must realize that vasanas cannot be fully satisfied. We have to take a decision whether we continue in that direction or whether we change our own conduct and remain satisfied with what we have. I think the second option, that we become satisfied with what we have and abandon that path, is the path of saints. This is the path which has been, uh, you know, talked about by all the in all the shastras and by all the rishis and munis of our ancient India. So this is what vasana is all about. It is an infinite progression which we should abandon sooner or later. It is better we do it earlier, because otherwise we will be born again with those vasanas in the next life, and that process will continue again, and the cycle will move forward and forward and forward. It will never come to an end. So the best thing is that in this current life, we start realizing our satisfaction at the level we are, abandoning all the desires, so that we can be satisfied, we can get away from that trishna, we can get away from that mirage, and we can remain happy in life. Otherwise, we will always remain unhappy, because as long as you have vasana, as long as you have trishna, we will be unhappy, and that unhappiness will lead us to do certain activities which are completely undesirable, which will have their own consequences subsequently. So it's better to abandon them. So this is what I thought I will talk about vasana. Now, there's another word which has been coming in our discussion often, that is Ved, and we talked about Vedana. Now, the word Ved, this was also raised by somebody to me, that we should discuss this word Ved, because we have Ved which are known as four Veds, that is starting from Rig Ved, Atharv Ved, Sam Ved, Yajur Ved. The four Veds are the foundation of Indian civilization. Now, the word Ved originates from Sanskrit root Vid. Vid means to know or knowledge. Now, we have many words out of it, like we have Vidyarthi, the person who wants to earn knowledge. We have Vidyalaya, the place where the knowledge is, given to the students. We have word Vidwan, the person who has acquired a lot of knowledge. So we have many words here. We also have a word Vedana. Now, Vedana is a very different word compared to Ved, but it has the same root as Vasana. Now, Vedana is basically the pain. You get pain somewhere in the body, in some part of the body. It's called Vedana. Now, why this should be knowledge? Why it is connected with knowledge? This is something we must understand. You know, we do not feel our body. For example, we keep walking every day, but we don't feel our legs. If there's a pain in legs, you feel immediately, oh, I have legs also, and they are paining. Otherwise, you will observe for days together, you do not feel that you have legs. And like these days, I'm having little problem in the throat. I never feel that I have a throat, but when you have problem in the throat, Vedana in throat, then you feel that, yeah, there's a throat as well. When you have pain in your eye, you feel this, eyes existing in my body. So the knowledge of that part appears to us in a stronger way when the pain happens in that particular word. So that is why the word Vedana comes from Ved, that the knowledge comes in a larger quantity of the existence of that particular thing if Vedana comes from there. The Vedana can also come from outside. Somebody else can also cause you Vedana. Similarly, somebody else can cause you could become the cause of Vasana. So then we also recognize the existence of somebody else who is causing this Vedana or Vasana to us. So this is how the knowledge part becomes stronger because of that, knowledge, that particular pain which we acquire in the body or in any part of the body, or in even in the mental stress, for example, can cause that thing. So similarly, the Vasana and Vedana, they have similar connotation in Sanskrit grammar. They come from the same structure of words and have the same meaning, that you acquire greater knowledge of that particular quality which is there in the root of that particular word. Like the more more quantity of Ved knowledge, similarly more quantity of Vasan, that Vasana, and there are many other words in this sense. So these are some of the words which we needed to understand. Vedana, Ved, Vidyarthi, Vidyalaya, Vidwan. Now, there's also, some distinction between Ved and Gyan, which we should also understand. Now, Ge is the Sanskrit root which gives birth to Gyan. Ge means something which goes inside yourself, that it becomes part of you. That is Ge. So Vidyarthi need not, or Vidwan need not be a Jnani. You can acquire knowledge, like many of us acquire knowledge, but we don't necessarily become Jnani by acquiring knowledge. Acquisition of knowledge is the first part towards becoming Jnani, but then the knowledge has to become part of you. It has to percolate down in your personality. Then only the Gyan comes. When you digest that knowledge and when it becomes part of your conduct, then the Gyan happens. So Ge is important for the Gyan, and Ge takes place only when that becomes part of your conduct. So the Gyan is the ultimate, what you call, the 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 tip of the mountain, which originates from with, but when it becomes part of your personality, it becomes Gyan, it becomes Ge and Gyan. So Gyan is different, Gyani is different than Vidwan. Now Vidwan can give you fantastic lecture, he can talk about various shastras. Like we know, a lot of Pandits are great Vidwan. Pandit is another word for Vidwan. No, but Pandit not necessarily are Gyani. I know many Pandits who do great, they have great knowledge of Sanskrit, they have the knowledge of Gita, they have knowledge of Vedas, they can quote from Shastras, but in their personal conduct, they have not brought that knowledge, and therefore they are not Jnani. This is also the difference in what we call Pandit and Sadhu. The word Sadhu or Sant, actually, Sadhu or Sant means that you have uh, acquired control of your body and mind. Then you become Sadhu or Sant. But Jnani doesn't have to have that quality. And therefore, Jnani is the first stage. But once you become Sadhu or Sannyasi or Sant, that stage means that you have imbibed that knowledge into your personality and acquired control of your senses, and that is why you become. So this is the distinction between Pandit, Sadhu, Sant. Those are the distinction based on the scientific analysis of Sanskrit language. And the Sanskrit language is designed in that way to give these precise denominations, precise meaning to the roots of the words. So this is what I thought I will mention today. That was a comparatively shorter analysis based on certain queries that were raised. But in case there are more queries on these issues, we can discuss them, in our Q&A session today. But next time we will start the chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita. And I would like to mention that chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita is the most profound chapter in entire Bhagavad Gita. And we will need to understand that very properly. So I will request all of you that, we will devote enough time to that chapter and try to understand it in a proper perspective. It provides fantastic knowledge about the entire functioning of the universe. It's the most scientific explanation of the universe and the life. So we will go into that detail from next week onwards. Thank you very much. Now, anybody who wants to ask questions on these issues, I will do my best to respond to them. Thank you.
I put my question on the chat. Can you have a look?
Okay. Let me check. Just 1 second. Okay. Please cover the process of controlling desires. How does one go about it? Okay. So we can continue that in the talk. And now, how do we control the desires? The first process in the controlling of the desires is realizing that I have desires and I am, you know, propelling myself in the path of fulfilling those desires. That I have gone beyond the basic necessities and I am in the path of mirage. The first thing is the realization of that. Most often, the realization is the best thing and very good beginning. And I have realized that a lot of people who are in this cycle of vasana, they do not even know that they are in that cycle. So, first thing is to know that they are in the cycle. Now, how do we know? Knowing is a very honest conversation sometimes with others, but very often a meditation on the subject that why I am not happy, why I am getting distress again and again. If we meditate on that issue genuinely and in a very profound way, you will find the cause of that distress in vasanas. You will feel that in the last session also, one of the, I think Ashokji had asked a question that how do we control over, desires? Now he says that my son is not behaving in a particular fashion. How do we control that? Now that itself is a problem. Why do we want our son or daughter or somebody else to behave in the fashion we want him to behave? Let him have the freedom of his own behavior. Like we had our own freedom. When our parents were instructing us, we were also saying, let us have our own space and our own decision. Similarly, if we leave it to them, once they have become adult, we have given them whatever instructions are needed in the childhood. We protected them, we gave them the education, we taught them at home, everything was given. Beyond that, now they have to learn on their own and they have to follow a path of their own. And we do not need to get disturbed by what they are doing, because ultimately everybody else cannot behave as per our desire. If that were the truth, then we would be the control of this world. But that is not the case. You see, we can't control it. We can't control even our own self. How can we control others? So that is one thing, we should stop bothering how others are behaving. That is first thing. Secondly, their behavior should not cause pain in our system, in our mind or body. Now, very often we take it to our heart and we start distressing. Oh, he did not follow my suggestion. He did not do this. He did not respect me. He did not say good morning to me. Even small things can cause problems. So, his conduct should not impact on your behavior. So, that is one part of it. That is the external factor, where external interaction is involved. But very often there is no external intervention also. Like somebody wants to acquire wealth. Now he's engaged himself in acquisition of wealth all the time. He's interacting with others only for the purpose of acquiring wealth. But that's fine. He's doing his business. That's what he feels, that he's doing his business. Now that uh, realization will happen only when he does the meditation. He thinks that I have acquired so much wealth. He should see outside in the world that how much wealth is needed to maintain a reasonably good, healthy life. Maybe we need, say, 30,000 or 50,000 rupees a month to maintain a reasonably well-to-do life in present price level in India. Okay, and our income is, say, 500,000. So why should we bother too much for more income? Now that meditation will tell us that we have sufficient resources. We don't have to worry about this. Similarly for power. Now some people feel that they should acquire power. Now there the ego comes into place. He feels that I have capability, I can acquire, I am more capable than XYZ. If he is in this ministry, why can't I be? Now, that is a comparative study, and that arises from the ego and your own perception of your capabilities. There, if we follow the chapter 12 lesson of Bhagavad Gita, that we stop complaining about the outcome. We start accepting whatever is given by the Almighty, then the process will set into motion. The acceptance of what has been given, whether I'm very capable person, I may be very knowledgeable person, my qualities are great, but even then I am not acquiring as much power and wealth that somebody else has done. Now we should accept this as what we call the prasad of the Supreme, accept the life as given, and we take it as it is and we move forward. Then only we will be satisfied there, and our vasanas will ultimately start diminishing. So that is in terms of wealth and also in terms of power. But also, the comparative study should stop somewhere, because every entity in this universe is different, and their uh, you know reward and their actions are different than ours. So that is another thing which we have to keep in mind. Then the most important vasana is the desire for sex. This is one which I have seen even the people of 80 years of age having that desire. When they look at someone very beautiful, they still have that desire. I don't know why, but it is so. Because the sexual desire is very deeply rooted in the human body. The nature wants us to reproduce, and therefore that is very deeply in every system of our body, and to contain that desire is the most difficult aspect. To contain that desire, we have to throw our energy upward, and that is why we have to work on our Muladhar, so that the energy becomes urdhgami. It goes upwards and not downwards. That is when you are in the youth. But when you are even in the old age, one should realize that, I'm not even capable of doing certain things and I'm having desire for that. Why? Now that realization can come only through meditation again. And you would also see that the people who have uh, taken spouse after spouse, the people who have gone here and there, they are not satisfied despite all their efforts. So, what I'm looking for? I'm looking for something which is impossible. And that is what in one of the verses of Mahabharata it has been said that if you are the king of the whole earth, you are ruling the entire earth, and you are young, and you are not aging, your age is not going up, you are still young all the time, even then your desires cannot be satisfied. And this is based on the experience of a lot of people in the past. The saints and sages have experienced this and had mentioned all this. So I think we have to tackle each section of Vasana in a different way. There are four sections here. One section which is arising from the desire to control others, whether they are the family members or outside. Uh, the second section is to control greed on the wealth. The third section is to control greed on power. The fourth section is to have satisfaction on sexual issues. So these are the four different pillars on which the Vasana moves, and we have to tackle each pillar in a different fashion. Of course, the first pillar, the first step in all the direction is the realization that I am moving in that direction, and I should, despite doing so many efforts and so much, energy I have spent on it, I am still not satisfied. Why? That question should arise, and once that question arises, I think we can find the way to tackle that issue. Now, this issue of Yayati, the story of Yayati gives us a very good example how to tackle it. Yayati lived for 1,000 years and still his desires were unfulfilled, and therefore we can easily presume that if we continue to move in that direction, even for thousands, even millions of years, even then that will not be satisfied. And therefore, we have to at some stage stop thinking about that further. No more greed. Whatever has come, we should accept it. So I think these are the four different directions in which normally we move, and these directions can be controlled by the methods I have just mentioned. But of course, ultimately, it will depend on your willpower, because willpower is very strong here. You have to have Ichha Shakti, that yes, I want to control it, and that will develop only when you see people, poor people, living with very low income and happy. When you see fakir and you see Kabir, and if you see Rahim, and if you see Radas, even in that life they were happy. Why can't I be happy? So that will arise, that will give you some sort of inspiration to leave aside all these desires one after another.